All right, folks, I wanted to sit down today and just talk about Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, a game that came out many years ago to mixed reception and a game that I have pretty much put off playing for quite a while. I did dabble with it slightly when it first came out, but I think because I'm an old school Phantasy Star Online player, Blueburst, the Dreamcast version 1, Phantasy Star Universe, I think it's always kind of rubbed me up the wrong way, but I still wanted to give it a fair shot. I'd played PSO2 Classic back on the Japanese servers, back when you used to have to use Tweaker to get into the game, and had a lot of fun playing that. And New Genesis just seemed such a step away from what Phantasy Star Online was to me. With that said though, I do try and go into a lot of these games with a very, very open mind. At the end of the day, in my opinion, despite what the game is like, it is more Phantasy Star. If I can get more of a world that I enjoy being in, then I'm all for it. So for those of you unaware of what I do in these videos or what we do on the channel, I essentially play quite a few games and I give an initial first impressions, which is normally circa 10 to 15 hours of gameplay, and then a more fleshed out review once I got a bit closer into the end game. I struggle to give a final review on an MMO just because it's a live service game. You know, where do you really draw the line? But I do try and be as fair and comprehensive as I can. For full clarity, this video is not going to be in any particular order. I have written down on a notepad some pros and cons about the game, but really it's going to be more of a discussional format as to kind of what I feel. I kind of want to treat this as just two friends hanging out, shooting the shit, talking about Phantasy Star. So I guess we'll just start off with the pros. Let's start off on a high. And there is a lot going for this game. I know this game has quite a doomer community around it. It's got a lot of people that absolutely hate NGS, and I'm not denying, you know, the reasons for that. But I do feel like this game had a lot more going for it than I thought it would. So let's address the obvious here. The graphics are insanely impressive, regardless of the art style. I found that the color palettes were really, really nice, from the lush forest to the desert in Ratem City that I got to. A lot of the draw distances really sell the game. This game really is one of those games where if you see it and you feel like you can walk to it or you feel like you can travel to it, then 9 times out of 10 you can, which I really, really like. It helps with immersion and world building. Graphical flourishes on the skills were really, really nice, especially at night time when you see all the particles coming off the swords and the weapons. The enemies also glow and bloom quite nicely. It's just quite a pretty game. It's the sort of game that you can just sort of hang around and take screenshots in, or just sit around, chill, and just talk rubbish with your friends. A huge highlight for me in terms of graphics was watching the day and night cycle and just seeing how the vibrant colors of the day turn into these kind of like whimsical, ominous lights of the nighttime. I just thought it was really, really interesting. Sometimes in these games, when the graphics are really good in one area, they often fall in another. But I felt like in this game it was pretty well rounded. My character looked exactly how I felt it did on the character screen, as it did in game, which was really nice. The graphics and textures on the armor, the clothing, the swords, and we'll get into the cosmetic side of things because this game, it dives deep into cosmetics. But yeah, overall, really, really pretty game. Really enjoyable to at least view through my own eyeballs. As a huge Sega / PSO fan, it was really cool to see some crossovers. Right now there seems to be some sort of Sonic event going on in the main city. There was like Knuckles, Dr. Eggman, Sonic the Gang, you know, that sort of thing. PSO has been notorious over the years for its crossovers with various different games, even outside of its own umbrella. So that was really cool to see that they were still sort of following some sort of theme. I don't know if they do too many external crossovers these days, but to see them keeping it in-house was really, really cool. I will say that nothing butters my bread than hearing the original PSO lobby music and other musical pieces within the city of NGS. I was extremely worried going into this game that there would be no original PSO references at all, but quite gladly those worries were put to rest because there are a lot of throwbacks, a lot of nods to, you know, days of old, games of old, and that was really nice to see. Speaking of older Phantasy Star games, it didn't take me long to work out that you could emote using Alt and then a separate key, just like you can in Blueburst. And that was really, really nice. Actually, just sort of like standing there, cycling through all the different emotes. It really just through flashbacks in my mind of standing in Ragol or standing in forest and just dicking around, just having a good time with your friends. It was incredibly clear very early on in gameplay that this is a massive departure from PSO2 Classic, PSU, PSO. In many ways, I found with this game, if it didn't have on the box Phantasy Star Online 2, you would just assume that these games are totally unrelated. Other than some of the sort of theme songs, the music, and some graphical nods, really it's just a very, very different game altogether. It's really weird to explain because it kind of feels like PSO, but also at the same time, it feels nothing like it. And I know that does nothing to explain what I mean, but hopefully if you're watching this video and you've played both games, you'll kind of get what I'm referring to. Onto the things that matter then, the combat. I must say in this game, if you're going to give it credit for anything, it's got to be the combat. It is a little bit flashy in my opinion, but everything is dynamic. It lands when it's supposed to, you hit when you're supposed to hit, dodge when you're supposed to dodge, parry when you need to parry, and everything just feels really, really impactful. And, you know, not forgetting, you look incredibly cool whilst doing it. Now, this is probably more down to me just being a bit of a noob, but I did find that when I was using some of the melee classes, because I cycled through, I believe it was Ranger or Hunter, Braver, and then into Force. When I was using the melee class, sometimes if I wasn't locking on, the camera would just like squish right up against me, and I'd have to sort of turn my camera all the time, but it wasn't always super efficient to lock on to one singular enemy when you're a melee, because you kind of just want to hit everything. So I did find that a little bit jarring, but for the most part, everything was really fluid. The addition of the jump attacks are really, really cool. The way that you can sort of weave your skills off the back of each other. You can charge up certain photon arts to make them more impactful, more powerful, and you just start to get a feel of the rotation of your class, so to speak. And once you kind of nail that down, you nail the movement, the game really, it just makes you feel incredible. We touched on it a little bit there, but to complement the combat, we have to talk about the movement. The movement in this game, I'm really not shocked to see, because as a traditional PSO2 Classic player all those years back, it wasn't before long that people kind of got the meta of movement in PSO2 Classic. People would use photon arts to get about the levels and the maps as quick as they could. So I really wasn't shocked to see this level of movement in NGS, because ultimately, if people are going to find a way to do it anyway, then you may as well just implement it into the game. And honestly, seeing the dashes, the glides, the dodges, and just using all that to not just traverse around the map, but incorporate it into your combat rotation was really, really interesting. And it was a different dynamic to the game. A really cool feature that I like in a lot of MMOs, and I was really happy to see in NGS, was the fact that there didn't really seem to be any level scaling out in the open world. It really did feel like if you wandered into territory that you're not supposed to be in, you would get your ass handed to you. There were a lot of high-level enemies around, certainly a lot of like elite enemies as well that I noticed early on, level 79s to 80s in like level 10 areas, which is inherently cool. I love the fear, okay, the fear of wandering into the unknown and being punished for it. I just feel like a lot of games lack that sense of risk and reward, that sort of exploration. As a PSO veteran, if you like, in brackets there, it was really nice to see Photon Blasts make another appearance as well. And yeah, they land, dude. They really do feel good. They seem to change depending on what weapon you're using. They take a little while to build up, but I'm pretty sure you can flesh out your skills to be able to build up Photon Blast slightly quicker. And yeah, every time you use one of them, you just feel like a god. What I seem to pick up on fairly quickly, at least for the early game, I mean, I'm going to play this game some more and I'll find out later in the future, but it seemed that photon arts are quite limited on your weapons. I didn't seem to be learning any new photon arts or changing them. It seems that my skills that I was upgrading allow me to place new abilities on my bar, which I guess in many ways replaces the lack of photon arts that you learn. Maybe this changes later on in the sort of end game, but right now I'm kind of stuck with the same 3 or 4 photon arts. If you guys are in the know, then let me know how that works. If you're looking for a socially focused, cosmetic-driven game, then my god, look no further than NGS. The cosmetics in this game, there is almost like a whole game built around it. There are people that create designs, fashion designs, put them in a lookbook, and people can go into the lookbook and basically you can like certain designs, take inspiration from them. This game holds in-game concerts, like fashion shows, that sort of thing, which I thought was really, really interesting. The community is often speaking to each other that I found when I was standing in hubs, in towns. You can visit people's creative spaces, which is kind of like player housing, but like on crack. Like there is just stuff everywhere, and never underestimate the creative ability of the MMO community, because there is some really, really cool stuff here. I went to one creative space which was called like Between Two Worlds, or like Between Two Dimensions. Blew my mind, dude. Initially there was nothing there. I touched a candle, I teleported, and it's got like different components of like our world, fantasy worlds, and I thought, my god, someone has stood here and put the time and effort into this, and that was really, really like honestly, it blew my mind. Jumping back to the combat side of things, it was nice to see Emergency Quest still running. If I'm being honest, that was one of my highlights of PSO2 Classic, seeing that banner flash up with the music changing, the announcement, everyone just flocking to take down a massive boss and loads of enemies. That to me was peak PSO2. I absolutely love that. And to see it still make its debut, I guess, or make its path in NGS was really, really promising. And although I'm not at the battle power just yet, so battle power in this game is essentially what we would refer to in like World of Warcraft terms as like gear score, item level, that sort of thing. You have to reach a certain battle power threshold to be able to take on certain challenges. But although I'm not there yet, I am looking forward to getting to that point and being able to take part in some of those bosses, because from what I've seen other people play in trailers, streams, videos, the end game content is full of really, really cool battles. So then let's discuss what I would consider to be cons. And I try not to be too negative here. I do try and spread some positivity in the MMO space if I can. I'm going to be honest. The dolls, this new enemy type we've got, totally forgettable. I find them so soulless, uninspiring. As far as PSO goes, with boomers, with dragons, all of the classic fantasy stuff, whilst versions of those exist in this game, the first dragon I think I fought was some sort of robot dragon. It just does nothing for me, dude. When I think of PSO, I know it can't all be based around nostalgia and games of the past, but I think of, kind of like native-ish animals. I don't want to fight bats with cyclops eyes and robots, soulless fucking mechs. Also, there is absolutely no situation where you can say the word dolls and it actually sound impactful. To me, it is the stupidest name for an enemy I've ever heard, regardless of the backstory or regardless of what it actually stands for. I have no doubts that later on in the game there are some really, really cool enemies, bosses, mini-bosses, elite enemies, but right now, the first 10 to 15 hours, it's pretty bad in terms of the enemy design and enemies you come up against. And I found myself a lot of the time not really wanting to fight them, which is the polar opposite of how you should feel in a Phantasy Star Online game, where majority of the core content, the core draw to this game, is combat. To reinforce this though with a bit of a positive, I did enjoy the idea of picking out weak spots like you could in older games. Certain enemies have got clear weak spots on their back, on their front, and you've got certain abilities that can complement you taking down those weak spots to clear the enemies quicker. Being totally transparent here, I'm not much of a story fiend, although I did try and take in as much as I can, and I'll be honest, it's a lot more digestible in NGS than it was in PSO2 Classic, where things were kind of all over the place. But there are still a lot of really, really cringe moments. I mean, in one of the boss fights, one of the NPCs actually pauses the boss. We've had this epic battle, shots and fireballs and all sorts of stuff been thrown from both sides. We're both at the edge of our lives, waiting for the next crushing blow. And then all of a sudden, the battle stops. We stand in front of the dragon, and one of the NPCs goes, "Let's defeat it together," after she has this like inner monologue and realizes that she is strong enough to do whatever it is she needs to do. And it just kind of didn't land with me. It just felt really cringe, and I was just sort of sat in my seat. I was like, oh god, please, let's just kill this dragon. Moving away from that into the UI and the interface. Now, whilst the interface is pretty clean for an online game, for an MMO, stereotypically there is stuff everywhere. I must say the pop-ups when you are new, they are kind of intrusive. I think I had to span through 4 or 5 different screens. I then got a scratch ticket. I got access to some fashion straight away. And I'm going to be honest, as someone who's picked up this game for the first time, as much as there's little bits of text that explain that to you, I'm not interested. I just want to get past all these screens, spam A, and then just speak to whatever NPC I need to speak to. I feel like that sort of stuff could come a little bit later on. Now, although that's only introduced after the prologue, it is the moment that you get out of the teleporter into the first city. It's like, boom, here's like 4 or 5 windows, deal with it. Now, this might just be a bit more of a PSO kind of veteran doomer kind of comment, but I do kind of miss the feeling of picking up PA discs or just learning different photon arts, and I really am hoping something like that comes later on during the game, or a format of that. As much as I can learn different skills and put them on my hotbar, I do miss seeing the levels of different discs and kind of getting a rare drop for a certain photon art, learning it and then using it. That also leads me into my next statement. There doesn't seem to be a massive focus, at least from, of course, where I am now early on, but there doesn't seem to be a massive focus on rare drops or gear drops. Like, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing at the moment is focused around item enhancing. I mean, even from the off, the beginner weapon that you start off with is literally replaced within like a couple of missions. Like, you've just got this like plus 39 weapon sat in your inventory, I guess, to kind of catch people up a little bit and get the story going. But it doesn't really seem to be like, okay, go out, kill this enemy, grind, pick up a new weapon, change it. Like PSO2 Classic, for example, even in the first few missions, yeah, they aren't great weapons, but you're picking up new weapons to use, to try out. They might even be terrible, but stuff that you can kind of get your hands on and familiarize yourself with the weapons inside the game. In NGS, I've pretty much had the same weapon for, 20, 25 levels. I mean, I've changed class quite a lot of times, 3 or 4 times, but even then, I'm still stuck with the same weapon for a long time. I'm sure this might change later on during the game, which is why I'm trying not to be too harsh to it right now, but it's definitely something I picked up on. I'm not sure if there is a setting that I've missed, but it does seem to be that when I select a certain task or quest to go and do, even though I've discovered the area, it doesn't seem to pop up that easily. I mean, there are some quests that you have to be in the area for to actually be able to see the marker, but I just found that tracking certain side quests and tasks just isn't that easy, and there is a lot of clutter on the screen outside of just the UI. If you go on the map, for example, it is a minefield. So I do find that that sort of thing isn't quite as digestible as I want it to be, but that just might be me being a little bit old and slow. I was really sad to see that my mag didn't seem to really do anything outside of scan for materials or hidden boxes. I didn't seem to need to feed it or upgrade it in any way. It looks like I can change its form, change its color, but I really miss the interaction of upgrading a mag and that becoming part of your build and just fleshing that out a little bit more. So again, if that comes later on, then let me know. We touched a little bit on the graphics early on, and whilst the graphics are amazing, it is very, very hyper anime. And as someone who's not really much of an appreciator of that sort of style, it was kind of hard for me to get a grip with. I tried to model my character in the most kind of realistic form that I could, but ultimately I was still passing people with like fucking 333 double Z boobs, massive arse sliders, hyper anime faces, and it's just not my sort of vibe, especially coming from PSO Blueburst, original PSO and Dreamcast, where everything felt a bit more grounded, a bit more artistic, if you like. All in all, though, to summarize, as much as I'm having fun with the game and will continue to play it, there is one key thing that just jumps out to me at every single corner, and that is the fact that as much as I want this to be a Phantasy Star Online game, it just isn't. And I know that sounds really, really tone deaf to say, but I think I went into this game wanting it to be a Phantasy Star Online game, and ultimately it's just not. Phantasy Star has moved on a lot from what I used to know, and I just need to deal with that. But yeah, just some early thoughts. If you guys have any similar opinions, do let me know. And well, I'll catch you in the next review. That's it.